It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, live from the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Our top story. Putin's war is failing. Biden sends a strong message to the Kremlin on a surprise visit to Kyiv.
Putin thought Ukraine was weak and the West was divided. As you know, Mr. President, I said to you in the beginning, he's counting on us not sticking together.
The White House reveals it told Moscow ahead of the visit, but no reaction yet from the Kremlin. Plus, the factories in the US ramping up ammunition production to send to Kyiv.
Also tonight, police confirm the body found in the River Wyre is that of missing mother of two, Nicola Bully.
We will never forget Nikki. How could we? She was the centre of our world. She was the one who made our lives so special.
The families of 5 people shot dead in Plymouth accused the police of giving the gunman a licence to kill. And junior doctors in England vote to strike for 72 hours in March. We speak to one doctor who wants to leave the NHS. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30.
Good evening. We're live in Kyiv on a day when the West put on a show of strength and unity side by side with Ukraine. Earlier today, the US President Joe Biden arrived here to meet his counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky. A huge security operation ensued, fueling rumours that the US President would be coming here, and then pictures of the two presidents at one point laying wreaths at a memorial in the capital as air raid sirens sounded around them. The symbolic visit comes on the week that marks 1 year since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and Biden said the US support would not waver. Tonight, we'll report from here in Ukraine, from Moscow and from the US. Sky's security and defence editor Deborah Haynes is here in Kyiv and has tonight's first report.
Morning, Mr. President.
A moment of history in the heart of Kyiv.
More importantly, how are the children?
Joe Biden all smiles, but this trip took serious risk. Volodymyr Zelensky shows his most important of VIPs around. His top team keen to say hello.
They asked me how many times I've been here. I had to count. This is my 8th time.
Well, it's never enough.
I'm looking for a passport.
Wartime leaders wanting to show a united front.
This is so much larger than just Ukraine. It's about freedom and democracy in Europe. It's about freedom and democracy writ large.
The pair emerged from a private meeting with Mr. Biden announcing new pledges of military support worth $500 million.
Putin thought Ukraine was weak and the West was divided. But he's just been plain wrong. Plain wrong. And 1 year later, the evidence is right here in this room. We stand here together.
The visit by the President of the United States to Ukraine, the first in 15 years, is the essential visit of the entire history of Ukraine-US relations, precisely in this period, because this period is the most difficult.
It's a moment that won't be forgotten.
What a great honor.
With central Kyiv in lockdown, the two presidents toured a landmark monastery. A moment of reflection. And then a reminder of the war. To the echo of an air raid siren, they walked to a wall where Ukraine's war dead are remembered. Both paid their respects. A brief but bold encounter.
It's amazing.
Yes. We were surprised.
Yes, really surprised. And he's big boss, you know?
Coming just ahead of the first anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion, this trip appears designed to send a clear message to Vladimir Putin that Ukraine is still standing strong and the United States will stand alongside it for as long as it takes. But as the memorial wall illustrates, the cost already paid by this country has been huge, and the war has no end in sight. The US president will be all too aware his ability to stay the course in Ukraine has only just begun to be tested. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Kyiv.
As Deborah was saying, this war seems a long way from being over. As we approach a year since the start of the invasion, let's just take a look at how things have unfolded. On the first day of the war, cities across Ukraine were attacked by Russian forces. 1 month into the war, Russia controlled large areas of Ukraine's eastern border and was attempting to make land passages between strategic areas. A year into the war, Ukraine has managed to reclaim some regions previously held by Russia. The Russian offensive continues to have a large front line in the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine. It's believed a new Russian spring offensive will attempt to push further westwards across the Donbass and in the north from Zaporizhzhia. Over the weekend, Ukrainian troops conducted exercises in the town of Siversk, north of Bakhmut, a potential target, and it's thought Russia might set up other lines of attack, like Kyiv, to make it harder for Ukraine to concentrate its forces. Well, the visit by Joe Biden was tightly controlled, but it was revealed that the White House had notified Moscow that Biden would be in Kyiv today. Sky's Moscow correspondent Diana Magnay reports now on the Russian response.
Russia's flagship talk show 60 Minutes discussing Joe Biden's trip to Kyiv. A host, Olga Skabeeva, asks if Russia had guaranteed his safety, and if so, why. We could have killed Biden, but that would have been too much, her guest replies. We spoke to Sergei Markov, a one-time advisor to President Putin, just after he came off the show.
Washington made contacts with Russia before the visit to avoid nuclear war. It was about not killing President of the United States, Joe Biden, from Russian rocket missiles.
Because this would have meant potential nuclear war if anything had happened to him.
Yes, one of the possibility of the killing President of the United States or President of Russia, that it can lead to the nuclear war.
No comment yet from the Kremlin, but this is a week packed with presidential speeches. There is plenty of time. And these pictures will be spun to further the Kremlin's narrative that Ukraine does Joe Biden's bidding and that the real enemy here is the United States. No doubt the symbolism of this trip is not lost on Vladimir Putin, but unlike this time a year ago, he understands now there is no quick win to this war. He's seen the shape of Ukrainian bravery and of its allies' resolve in money and tanks and sanctions. And it hasn't stopped him yet. China's top diplomat was in Hungary today ahead of a trip to Moscow. The Kremlin says he may meet the president after the US warned China against supplying military aid to support Putin's war effort. China has not so far, but if it does, this terrible war in Europe could become more dangerous still. Diana Magnay, Sky News, Moscow.
Well, during President Biden's visit to Kyiv today, it was revealed that the United States would be providing $500 million in extra aid, including military assistance. Well, in the US itself, Sky News has visited an ammunition factory which has expanded its production to a level not seen since the Korean War. Sky's Mark Stone reports now from Scranton in Pennsylvania.
It is an unlikely place to find Ukraine's war effort in full swing. In the bowels of a former railway plant, 5,000 miles from the battlefields, American steelworkers producing round after round of artillery. We're on the production line of a century-old factory, an industry that had been dismissed as obsolete is now in overdrive.
This robot will operate in this environment all day, every day.
The tour offered to Sky News is an attempt to show that the production line is fine, that the West is not running out of ammunition.
There's a surge in production. We're working as hard as we need to work to fulfill the requirements of the contract. We're working probably 2 shifts every day, solid 5-6 days a week, and also preparing, to increase production incrementally.
None of the officials will mention Ukraine itself. Language is carefully controlled, contracts and meeting demand. But the contract is Ukraine and the demand is huge. 11,000 rounds now roll off this line each month, and yet it's not nearly matching what Ukraine's army is using.
Well, one staggering statistic which illustrates the intensity of the war in Ukraine. The military there is firing off between 5,000 and 7,000 of these artillery shells every single day. And that's why the US military is investing $2 billion to ramp up production of facilities like these.
This factory alone is getting $240 million to modernize because Russia has spooked the West. A mechanical war of the type they thought was in the past. It's firing up old factories and old rivalries.
Russia is obviously they're wrong, and we're doing the right thing by supporting them.
The pre-Ukraine just-in-time supply chain is breaking down and stockpiles are shrinking. Put simply, it's a race against Russia to rearm. It's expensive. Important safety standards slow the process, and this is the easy part. Because from here, they're shipped 1,000 miles west to Iowa, where they're filled with explosives and fuses are fitted, and then to Ukraine. This surge in activity reflects the new fragile reality, hollowed out Western stockpiles and the threat of continental conflicts. Mark Stone, Sky News, in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Let's go live now to Warsaw in Poland, President Biden's next stop after Kyiv. Our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn is there. And Dominic, tomorrow a tale of two speeches. President Biden in Warsaw and President Putin in Moscow.
Yeah, very well put, Mark. I think we've got live pictures of Chopin Airport just outside of Warsaw, where we are expecting Air Force One to arrive, bringing the American president after his epic journey from where you are, due to arrive just about now, so running a little bit late. Now, ahead of that, one of his officials said that Joe Biden had felt that he had a mission to undertake by going to Kyiv, that he wanted to do, so he can retire tonight confident that that mission is accomplished. The day's been compared by some to some of the memorable moments of the Cold War. The Ich bin Berliner speech, for instance, that JFK, John F. Kennedy, gave in Berlin, West Berlin in 1963, or the speech in 1987 where Ronald Reagan urged Mr. Gorbachev to tear down that wall. What we haven't heard is the kind of rhetoric or oratory to match those moments, although some people say just by going there we've had a moment just as memorable. But the American president has a chance tomorrow to find the words to fit the moments, to fit the momentous time that we're in now. That's this pivotal moment as we move into a second year of the war. And he has that chance when he gives his speech in the gardens of the Royal Castle here in Warsaw tomorrow afternoon. Ahead of that, he's got a meeting with Andrzej Duda, the Polish president, and the next day he's going to meet the leaders of the Bucharest Nine. Those are the Central European nations closest to Russia. They are projecting unity and solidarity, but behind that there is still this tension between those who want to give the Ukrainians everything they need now in a military sense to finish the war off as soon as possible before it spreads to other nations, as world leaders have been warning us this week, or draws in China, as the Americans have been warning about as well. And those on the other side who say give the Ukrainians too much, they may go too far. They may corner Vladimir Putin and he may escalate the war out of desperation. And I think so behind the projection of strength, resolve and unity we've seen today and will see in the coming days, there is that tension in the positions between the allies, a tension I think that the president and his allies will want to try and resolve as we move into a second year of this war.
OK, Dominic, thanks very much indeed. And on that very issue, tonight the former Prime Minister Liz Truss has called for military aircraft to be sent to Ukraine, speaking from the back benches and echoing a call from her predecessor Boris Johnson. Liz Truss said it's an essential move to help Ukraine win the war.
We need to do all we can as fast as we can. My view is that does include fighter jets. And we've had a discussion today about which are the best possible options. Having spoken to the Ukrainians about this months and months ago, I know what they want is an option. They want So let's work with our allies to get them an option to be able to use, because otherwise they won't be able to prevail.
Also in the UK, the King has visited Ukrainian military recruits being trained in Wiltshire. Many of the 200 recruits are civilians who have no previous military experience. They are being taught the basics of combat during a 4-week course. Well, there we are, Anna. It's been a quite remarkable day here, and tomorrow these two big speeches from President Putin and President Biden. Back to you.
Mark, thank you. Family and friends of Nicola Bulley finally had confirmation today that the body recovered from the River Wyre yesterday is that of the missing mother of two. The 45-year-old disappeared while walking her dog in St Michael's on Wyre more than 3 weeks ago. Her body was found about 1 mile away from where she was last seen. Sky's Inzamam Rashid reports, and a warning, this report contains flash photography.
It took 24 days to find her, and it was the news nobody wanted to hear. Nicola Bully, the mum of two, whose face has been painted across the nation for the last 3 weeks, was indeed the body police recovered from the River Wyre.
We are now able to confirm that yesterday we recovered Nicola Bully from the River Wyre. Nicola's family have been informed and are of course devastated. Today's development is not the outcome any of us would have wanted.
And a family, heartbroken, said this.
We will never be able to comprehend what Nikki had gone through in her last moments, and that will never leave us. We will never forget Nikki. How could we? She was the centre of our world. She was the one who made our lives so special, and nothing will cast a shadow over that.
And then criticism of the media and the way it has reported on the investigation.
It saddens us to think that one day we will have to explain to them that the press and members of the public accuse their dad of wrongdoing, misquoted and vilified friends and family. This is absolutely appalling. They have to be held accountable. This cannot happen to another family. We tried last night to take in what we had been told in the day, only to have Sky News and ITV making contact with us directly when we expressly asked for privacy. They again have taken it upon themselves to run stories about us, to sell papers and increase their own profits. It is shameful they have acted in this way. Leave us alone now.
Their pain wasn't helped by 3 long weeks of extensive searches, including divers, boats scouring the riverbanks and high-tech sonar equipment. There was no sign of the 45-year-old. They all failed to locate her. In the end, it was 2 dog walkers that found Nicola.
It was along this stretch of river where police retrieved Nicola's body, a mile downstream from where her phone, her dog Willow and its lead were discovered. But finding her isn't the end of this investigation. Police are trying to piece together how and why she ended up here.
A 10-minute window of Nicola's movements around this bench remains unaccounted for. It could be a mystery that may never be resolved. But Lancashire Police will need to provide answers to the very top of government.
I did have concerns earlier in the week about some of the elements relating to the release of personal information of Nicola Bully into the public domain. I raised those concerns with the Chief Constable. I wasn't wholly satisfied, I have to say, with some of the responses I got.
In the village of St Michael's, the last 3 weeks will have felt like time has stood still. A small, quaint community now dealing with great loss and pain. Inzamam Rashid, Sky News, Lancashire.
Families of victims of a mass shooting in Plymouth said today that the gunman, Jake Davidson, had been granted a licence to kill after the police ignored warnings about him. The coroner ruled that the 5 victims were unlawfully killed. A warning: this report from Dan Whitehead shows footage of a separate attack on members of the public carried out by Jake Davidson.
Leaving home after killing his mother with a loaded shotgun he should never have had. In August 2021, Jake Davidson strolled the streets of Plymouth, killing his victims at random. They included 3-year-old Sophie Martin and her father Lee, along with Davidson's mother Maxine, 59-year-old Stephen Washington and 66-year-old Kate Shepherd. Captured on CCTV with the gun under his chin, Davidson then took his own life. 18 months on, an inquest jury has found how Devon and Cornwall police made catastrophic failures in granting Davidson a shotgun certificate, which the victims' families say was essentially a licence to kill.
We will never be able to understand or comprehend why Davidson did what he did. It was an act of pure evil. However, we now know that this evil act was facilitated and enabled by a series of failings and incompetence from the people and organisations that are supposed to keep us safe.
When 22-year-old Davidson applied for a shotgun licence, he declared his autism and Asperger's, but police failed to get information from his GP. In September 2020, he brutally attacked a teenager in a skate park. Police investigating didn't know he had a shotgun licence. The officer was unaware. FC on the police database meant firearms certificate. His weapon was eventually taken away, but despite his history of violence and the fact his mother had tried to refer him to the anti-terrorism prevent scheme, his gun was handed back just 5 weeks before his shooting spree.
I am deeply sorry for the loss of those families and for the failings in my force that led to Jake Davidson having a gun where he shouldn't have.
The force says the application process for a firearms licence has been reformed, but the issues highlighted in this inquest are more far-reaching. This is not just about failures in one force. The jury also found that a lack of training for firearms licensing officers was nationwide, putting public safety at risk. The police watchdog, the IOPC, has issued a series of recommendations to strengthen firearms licensing. But for the victims' families, this is yet again a case of too little too late. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Exeter.
Another powerful earthquake has struck Turkey's Hatay province tonight. Measuring 6.4 magnitude, tonight's earthquake centred around the town of Defne and was followed by a 5.8 aftershock. Initial reports say at least 3 people have been killed and more than 200 injured as more buildings collapsed. The same area was devastated by the massive earthquake more than 2 weeks ago, which killed more than 47,000 people. Scotland's Finance Minister Kate Forbes has said she will stand to succeed Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister. Her confirmation came as Angus Robertson, the SNP's former Westminster leader, ruled himself out of the leadership contest. Nicola Sturgeon said today she won't be endorsing any candidate.
It's now for the SNP members to scrutinise and evaluate the competing candidates and make their choice. I am not going to pass comment on any individual candidate. I'm not going to endorse anyone. I don't think that would be fair or appropriate. I've got one vote, the same as every other SNP member. But what I'd say to all of the candidates in the race and the person who ultimately succeeds is my door will always be open should they want to have my advice or my perspective from my years of experience as First Minister.
Junior doctors will follow other health workers and strike for 72 hours next month in a dispute over pay. 98% of those who voted backed the move. The British Medical Association said doctors were frustrated and angry. One junior doctor has told Sky News that the NHS system is broken. Sky's People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin reports.
So here we are at the hospital where you're currently working.
Yeah, I do most of my shifts here in A&E.
This is Alessia Waller, a junior doctor working in the NHS, but she's had enough.
It can be easy to forget that you're in a world-class tertiary centre and just feel like you're in the trenches.
The NHS is facing the greatest workforce crisis in its 74-year history. Doctors like Alessia say they're being driven away by a toxic mix of poor working conditions and poor pay. After just 9 months in the job, she says she was burnt out, signed off work.
I just hated going to work. I hated being at work. I didn't feel like I was doing my job well anymore. I was just disconnected and disillusioned with everything.
What does it tell us about the system, the NHS, that you needed to step out?
I think it shows that the system is not fit for purpose and that it is past breaking point.
Junior doctors have now voted in favour of strike action, which means they'll join nurses and ambulance staff in a walkout, which will place intense pressure on the NHS.
What they've seen is a sequence of below inflation pay rises. So they've seen their pay in relative terms fall by about 26% since 2008. And that's really difficult for them. You know, they're not worth a quarter less than they were in 2008.
The Department for Health and Social Care says there are record numbers of doctors working in the NHS, but that doesn't tell the full story. A record number are resigning too. 3,229 doctors resigned from the NHS in England last year, and the number of doctors leaving has accelerated rapidly since the pandemic. Last year, almost 13,000 doctors in the UK gave up their licence. That's up by 9% on the year before. Alessia looks likely to add to that. She's planning to move to the United States to pursue her dream of becoming a surgeon.
The NHS can no longer offer me the training that I need or want. I don't feel valued, I don't feel supported, and I think I might have a better chance somewhere else.
The Department for Health and Social Care says vacancies are increasing because services are expanding to tackle waiting lists post-COVID. But the NHS is now in a perilous position, with record numbers of workers planning to walk out as discontent spreads. Nick Martin, Sky News.
Let's take you straight to pictures in Warsaw. Here is Air Force One, the US President departing. His plane, as you can see, flew from southeastern Poland after another 10-hour train journey back across Ukraine after that surprise visit. Heading into the centre of Warsaw, where he will make an address tomorrow afternoon from the gardens of the Royal Castle there, after a meeting with the Polish President, Andrzej Duda, and the Bucharest Nine, those Central European nations closest to Russia. All part of this visit to Poland, which was scheduled. The part that was unscheduled, of course, the visit to Ukraine. The pictures of him with President Zelensky, seeing those photos of the dead in the Ukrainian war, and that significant visit today to the Ukrainian capital.